Love Uncut's criteria. Well, we like people who like our videos. We like people who share our videos. We like people who comment on our videos below with their thoughts and feelings. And we like people who subscribe to the channel, of course.
I don't know what you're aiming for. You've got Wednesday here today. Right, it's not Wednesday, it's Tuesday. So I'll call you maybe Thursday. Anyway, hello everybody, my name is Paris.
I'm Selena.
Welcome to our channel. We are
Love Uncut.
So actually today is an episode reflecting on the series on Netflix, Indian Matchmaking. This was a very popular show on Netflix. I saw it trending at top 5 at one point. I'm sure it was probably even higher than that before we actually started watching. The reason why we started watching is because we have an Indian friend who, who suggested that we watch it just based on the characters. And
yeah, she said she was enjoying it, and I think it had only just come out that weekend as well. So she was right in there, and we were like, oh yeah, let's watch it too.
Yeah, and it wasn't just her, there was her partner that was interested as well. Yeah, so they were both kind of hooked in it. As I say, it was trending top 5 in the UK. Now, that shows that it wasn't just Indian people who were watching Indian matchmaking, it shows that it had a broad appeal. And yeah, we're just going to reflect on what we learned and, what we thought of, the show itself.
So I guess the premise of the show is there's a lady called Seema, and she's based in Mumbai, and I guess she's a jet-setting matchmaker. That's really what there is to it. She helps men find a significant other that they will hopefully end up marrying. That's the aim of the game, and she goes through a whole process in terms of finding the right person. She brings a whole list of individuals, doesn't she, to the person. She gives
it's called a biodata.
Biodata, which is basically, I guess, a
CV.
Yeah, a CV.
A resume.
It's got a picture on it. It's got likes, dislikes, career, education,
height,
family, personal interests, all sorts of things going on. So she'll bring a selection of those biodatas, and then the person who's hired her to find a match will choose their top 1 or 2 and go on a date. And if that works, they'll continue to go on dates. If not, then it's on to the next biodata and you go on another date. So it's kind of like a better and more personalised human version of Tinder, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And what you would see is with each boy or girl who wanted to get married, you would have sometimes the family members in the background as well, helping and advising.
Most of the time,
yeah, most of the time, if not all of the time. In fact, the parents were very involved. I mean, Selena and I found it very funny how at one point one of the parents said, hurry up, I've been waiting, I've been waiting for you to get married, right?
Well, there was even a point where the parents said, your brother who's married can't have a child until you get married. This was a person called Akshay, whose mother was very involved. His mother was called Preeti, and it was just about her ticking the box of my children are married. And it was interesting to see, because I guess coming from a Nigerian background, there were a lot of similarities in that respect of the pressure to get married and the status that comes with married. And if all your kids are married off, then you've ticked that box of being a good parent, along with them going to uni, etc. So it was very interesting to see the similarities. I personally don't know if in Nigeria they have matchmakers like Seema, but I guess all the other bits, all the cultural aspects and the pressures of marriage are very similar.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of reflective of a wider cultural pressure on women anyway, but I just think it manifests itself in more maybe blatant ways within the Indian culture, for example, in the Nigerian culture. And I think it's interesting how I believe that obviously marriage is an ideal, but it was very much normalised depending on which parent you were talking to about, you know, an aim for their child. But that said, I did really enjoy the fact that the Indian Matchmaking show showed a lot of untraditional family models. So you had women who had been divorced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had
Rupam, I think, the Sikh lady.
Yes, and then you had also the gentle guy, who's the big guy.
Oh, Vyasa, he is my favourite. He was so cute.
Yeah, so you had him who, you know, for example, did say that he had dated outside of the Indian culture. And you had someone who was Guyanese, who just for all intents and purposes ethnically is Indian, but she's not from there. And that was brought up as a point of contention. So honestly, I don't think there were many stones left unturned. Not that I know all of the stones, you know, within the Indian culture, but it really did, you know, holistically show all these different angles and quirks.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why some people have kind of been a bit upset by the show because of all the unturned stones. So if you look on social media or news articles, people are quite upset at all the references to being fair-skinned and, oh, you know, not dark-skinned, fair-skinned. Because basically when you hire Seema, you tell her what you want in a person, and I mean, people have all sorts of things. I don't want them to be a lawyer because I'm a lawyer, or, you know, I want them to be a good person, whatever that means. Or in many cases, I want them to be fair-skinned, not too dark-skinned, which is basically colorism that we've covered in some of our other episodes. But there's quite a lot of uproar around that on one hand, and then on the other hand, people are saying actually it's a good thing that this has been exposed, and maybe it will make people reflect and actually, you know, question themselves. Is it okay to say that?
Yeah, I mean, we had the example of a young, you know, 20-something named Risha.
Oh, the one at the end, right?
Yeah, she was listing off, you know, what she wanted, and she's like, oh, by the way, he has to like eggs. I cook with a lot of eggs. And then in the same breath, she said he can't be too dark. So it was just so casual, you know, the colorism, and it is clearly deeply embedded into that society and the cultural expectations. Now, there was no one who, I guess, spoke up against much of the kind of stones that were unturned. But, you know, in real life, I mean, I know we have friends who are anti-colorism, you know, who don't believe it's a good thing, you know, actually speak against it. But in the show, it kind of, I think the purpose of the show was, aside from showing these kind of cute love stories, it also wanted to bring these cultural expectations up, you know, for discussion, clearly. And, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, it's obviously clear everyone's on the same page that colorism is wrong. You can't support the George Floyd Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, in the same breath say, oh, I need someone that's light-skinned, and kind of, you know, put that hierarchy that you can't do it. And then obviously recently we had the Fair and Lovely whitening cream, which is like $1 billion cream in India. They had to rebrand to Glow and Lovely. So, you know, the rebranding, they just need to
but the product still exists, right?
Yeah, change the ingredients. Yeah, change the ingredients themselves.
Don't just scrap the product. I mean,
change the ingredients to not whiten though. If you do that, then it's cool.
It's tricky. If you're doing it to change the colour of your skin, there's something inherently wrong. But there are people who do have pigmentation issues or have like dark spots caused by prior acne. Well, but that might be how they sell it. You know, I don't know. It's a tricky one, but you shouldn't be branding it as here's a skin whitener. You know, you shouldn't be doing that.
Oh no, don't brand it as associating fair with...
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, that's not cool. But, you know, I think it was interesting kind of looking at some of the cultural expectations. As you said, it was similar to Nigerian cultural expectations, you know, what they want their kids to kind of marry into. There wasn't so much an explicit wish, for example, for many of the families that I saw, you know, for women to stay at home and be kept women, which is obviously a common theme within, say, Nigerian culture and Indian culture. Their mums and dads were keen, you know, for their daughters to have their own careers, but it was also very important for their partner to have you know, an established career as well. But what you kind of almost saw in some cases, particularly with Apna, is the one.
Aparna.
Aparna, the
Excuse
one with the mum.
my pronunciation if it's not right.
Aparna. Yeah.
What?
So,
no, the lawyer, the first one, yeah.
Yeah. Aparna stuck out in everybody's conscience because she was so difficult and hard to please.
But maybe, you know what? Reflecting on that, maybe she had to be that way, almost a little bit stubborn to get what she wanted, because otherwise maybe she felt as a woman she'd kind of be walked over in terms of like the traditional aspect of being a woman and staying at home, whereas she was quite like a career woman and very like structured in what she wants to do and she wants to take charge. Maybe she felt she had to be like that as an Indian woman to sort of get what she wants.
Well, you said that she's a career woman, but she did say repeatedly, I don't like my profession. I mean, she's a lawyer, but she does not like being a lawyer. Do you know what I mean?
But she obviously works hard at it, whether she likes it or not.
Yeah, which is a sad thing, and that's my main point here, to be honest. So she basically turned into a tick box. So much as marriage is a tick box exercise for a lot of parents within the show, and parents worldwide, for their child, you know, who they marry, when they marry, that they even get married. I think she was just so busy being this ultimate human that she could only fit a relationship into a very confined space. You know.
She had that whole thing of you have 55 minutes in this wine restaurant and that's it. If it doesn't happen, it's closing by.
That reminds me of kind of like a London life, you know, imagine, because it's so busy, like imagine trying to find, you know, somebody there, you know, it's difficult. So I think, you know, she did soften up anyway, but it was just clear that she had done well in life, but she was just almost like a robot to an extent. Because, you know, what are we? If we're not productive, or suddenly we're not useful, we're not productive, then suddenly we're not useful. She literally didn't know how to relax. So
on holiday she didn't.
And
it's like, beach? What? I don't want to be on a beach. It's like, that's why you go on holiday, to be on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it was good that she kind of met someone who knew themselves and could ask those kind of questions. So, do you know how to relax? You know, I was glad when he just kind of put it to her. I think in many ways, you know, kind of doing the arranged marriage thing puts a lot of things on the table that people in love situations don't consider. And sometimes it can unhinge or derail certain people. So I think there's definitely a pro and con of these people really trying to lay their cards on the table.
You mean in terms of like having conversations up front?
Yeah, when I'm saying, do you know how to relax? I mean, you know, that's a good question. Or, you know, things about how you're going to raise your kids if you have kids. So there's a lot to...
sorry.
Go on.
That's why I think that the Vyasa guy and his initial date had issues, because they were kind of talking about the big things and they realised they didn't really see eye to eye, whereas if you took it a step backwards at their first date, they enjoyed each other's company because it was small talk, you know. And it's kind of like you can have a good first date, and that's what the whole thing is about, getting to know someone. You realise what you agree or what you don't agree on, and maybe it's speeding up conventional dating in that respect of, you know, actually we don't agree, that's it.
Yeah, and I think it was cool that, you know, the families got to meet each other at the same time that the kids were meeting, right? So in the love situation or a traditional Western situation, the parents aren't necessarily obligated to meet or to bond or to interact in that way. And, you know, depending on your situation, that can cause some bumps down the road as well. So, you know, there's definitely some pros to that approach of arranged marriage. I think it works in a certain context, for sure. So if there's like an expectation that marriage is a tick box, then it works. You're going to make it work, right? So Married at First Sight, not too dissimilar to Indian Matchmaking.
I think that's even worse, because you just get married. You don't even see the person. You just get married and that's it. And it's like, okay, if it works out, great, which I think none of them ever work out.
The American ones last longer though, in aggregate.
maybe, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's a different conversation. But like they get divorced, and to me, I kind of think that's a mockery of marriage almost, because the whole point of getting married is it sounds really cheesy, but you love someone. It's your statement of commitments. Paris doesn't agree with me at all, but that should really be what it comes down to. It's someone that you can see yourself growing with, adapting to things with, enjoying each other's company over time. And people do change, but it's like you anticipate that, and you're able to adapt. Or if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. At least you had the right intention at the start. But I just find Married at First Sight a bit premature. It's like, okay, these people have all matched these questions, and there you go, get married. Like, it doesn't always work on paper. Like, people that work on paper don't always work in reality.
Yeah, so maybe it's, I mean, I think it's a bit unfair to say that, it's a mockery. Not necessarily. I mean, people know about the gravity of marriage. That's all we know, growing up. But if it goes wrong, whether it's one day in or 1 month in or 10 years in, then, and that's the route you have to take, then that's what you do, right? Like,
my point is that I think this is slightly better because you have the opportunity to meet someone and then opt out before it goes too far down the line. But I can appreciate that nowadays it's so hard to meet people, and it's like draining, isn't it? Dating, all these online apps. How do you actually meet someone? Because everyone's so busy. Where's the right environment to meet the kind of person that you want to go out with? So I get that these shows provide a format for people to meet each other, but I think it's better if you have the opportunity to date a little bit before actually getting married.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that some of the people on Indian Matchmaking discovered. Like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna learn about myself, like Ankita.
Oh, I really liked her. Yeah, I'm happy she kind of like found herself a little bit through that life coach.
Yeah, and it was a conscious decision. She said, I'm going to find out exactly what my boundaries are. And, it wasn't that the people on the show hadn't dated before. They had dated. Some of them were in their mid to late 30s. And, they'd done a little bit of exploring, and then I guess this helped to inform them on their journey. Some of them were just... and you could tell they hadn't even caught a cold before. Especially Akshay, like, he was a cool guy.
He was like a little lamb.
Yeah, and he got married to a little lamb in the end.
They didn't get married. I read up it didn't actually. That was the engagement.
Oh, that's a spoiler, man.
Oh.
Yes, the truth is, I was never kind of culturally opposed to arranged marriages. I just thought, oh, it's a different way of people doing things.
As long as people aren't forced. Like, if they're...
Yeah, forced marriages, yeah.
Because, like, the Akshay guy, you could tell he wasn't ready, and he was just very passive because his mum was taking charge, and, like, he knew there was no way out of it.
But even his little brother was sitting there like, when are you going to get married?
Yeah, because the little brother has been forced. So it's like, well, I'm married, you too, you must also get married. And, like, you could see the mum when she was with her friends, you could see, like, she felt... oh, my son's not married, and all their other kids are. Like, you could tell that she felt like she potentially maybe even failed as a parent. I don't know, maybe that's how some parents feel, because it's like, as I said, it's a tick box, isn't it?
Yeah, and blood pressure was involved, her health, a little bit of emotional blackmail going on.
Maybe it affects family status, all these kind of things that culturally we might not be 100% certain of, but I think there's definitely an element there to consider. What I did find interesting, though, was that there seems to be a little bit of a cultural shift with the women more so than the men. Like, a lot more of the women were like, career focused and hardworking and very proud of themselves. And even the lady that actually got engaged to, she said that, I want to work and I don't want to just be stuck at home and all that kind of stuff. And he was a bit taken aback by that, saying, oh, but who's going to do all the stuff my mum usually does, because I can't do it. And it's sort of like maybe men in their head think that when you do get married, it has to be traditional because that's how their parents were, and that's the only way they can see it working, when perhaps they need to update that thinking.
Update it like an app.
Yeah.
That's expired.
Because things have progressed and women do work and want to work and have a lot to give. That's a lot more than just cooking and looking after kids. And I'm not demeaning that either, because that's very, very hard.
Yeah.
You know, being a housewife, I think, is one of the most unglorified jobs in the world, because you're basically everything in one, and people take it for granted. Some people, but not all people.
You went and had your kid, man. You know what I'm saying? You make your bed.
Yeah, but you're
no pun
two
intended.
to tango, mate.
No pun intended. But, you know, you make your bed and everybody else's bed in the house. You know, then you lie in it. Do you know what I mean? And yes, it does take two to tango, but it's a labour of love. It's a thankless task. Having a child is one of the most selfless things you could ever do. I think being a housewife without the child is obviously a lot easier, right? There's a bit more space and time for you. But yes, you put the child in the mix, then.
But having a kid is also one of the most rewarding things in the world.
Yeah,
as many mothers have told me. So I do. Like there's a living well index calculated by Sainsbury's. Sorry, this is really random. But people with kids tend to be more happy and feel like they're living well in life. And I wonder if that's just because it's such a rewarding experience, and actually you feel like you have a purpose.
Well, you gotta be rich to have kids these days. So these people are already yummy mummies, you know, pushing prams in Wimbledon. You know what I mean?
It's all sectors of society that take part.
Someone from Hackney, yeah, they're like, yo, having kids was a mad thing, man. Man, recommend it. Is that what they did in the survey? I somehow doubt it. In fact, the people in Hackney even reply to surveys. They got bigger problems. But yeah, that's another topic for another time, as I like to say. But yes, I think that because ultimately marriage is a defined institution, you can come in and try and remix it if you want. But there are givens, basically, and things men take for granted in that situation. So what you're seeing is, because it's more oppressive on the women, it stands out when the women go against what the institution may suggest. So, you know, good on those women for doing that.
Well, and for being open about it. I think that's just in general worldwide. That's a massive that's a massive portrayal of progression for women to be able to do that in such cultures, to be very open about what they want at the start of the process, so everyone's on the same page, you know. And anyway, despite her saying that, he still went ahead, so it obviously didn't put him off that much.
Yeah, whether it was implicit by the fact that Aparna was already established, you know, as a lawyer, as a successful lawyer, or whether it's explicit with Akshay's bride-to-be, where she said, I don't want to be a housewife. You know, both ways, the women in this show were definitely, you know, putting their priorities to the forefront and telling.
Same with Ankita.
Yeah, Ankita definitely. She was a bit spicy.
I liked her because she was spicy, and I really liked that. Like, she was basically talking about her views on marriage and saying that, you know, equality, and she doesn't want to feel forced, and she doesn't like how it's all based on how people look and all that kind of stuff. Her dad said, you know, her thinking is ahead of this time, and the mum kind of wasn't quite sure of that, but I thought it was really cool that her dad recognised, you know,
who his child is.
Yeah, that exactly what she stands for. But maybe she's right. Maybe, you know, this isn't how things are at the moment, aren't quite how they should be. Yeah,
I mean, for sure. I think the difference between, say, you know, our generation and generation before is that we just ask more questions and we ask more, oh, what's in it for me? Like, we literally ask that question, we weigh things up. And whereas the generation before, they would do it because it's the done thing or because their parents told them to. I mean, Seema herself, when she went to her matchmaking friend who did more non-traditional matches, you know, she did explain that, you know, basically why do people get married? Well, Seema said people get married because the parents, you know, say it. Which was the case, and not just in the Indian culture, you know.
In many cultures.
Yeah.
Everywhere, really. Even in England, people
Not
do
even,
that.
yeah, not even, I mean, just everywhere. It's not even, just, that's
The
just the standard.
expectation.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, you know, they didn't really, so Seema understood the game, but she didn't really question why. She's just like, look, these people want this. I'm going to go in and do this, you know.
Oh, she's providing a service.
Yeah.
There is one thing I wanted to say about her colleague, though, that it kind of irked me a little bit when her colleague was talking to and Keita and was basically saying that, you know, if you're married, you basically have to drop everything you are and everything you're doing and be able to move with your husband, and that's it. And to me, it was like kind of really hard and fast, and it's like, well, surely if you're married to someone, you'd have a conversation and discuss like the impact of moving and pros and cons and all that kind of stuff, and you take everything into consideration, then you'd make a joint decision. It wouldn't just be like whatever your wife says you do or whatever your husband says you do.
She wasn't saying, that's not how I interpreted what she said. Basically, Ankita came in and just said, look, my friends are here, my families are here as well. I need this gentleman to come in and fit around that. She's saying, look, you have to be super flexible. It might be the situation where you have to end up moving country. That's what she said she did, right? She lived all her life in one country, then she just had to move, you know. So
but the way she
that's
said
realistic.
it was like,
it wasn't, I don't think it was
questions asked.
I don't think it was rooted in patriarchy, to be honest. I think it was more compromise, you know. I think that's an overall theme of the show, what marriage is.
Yeah, Seema did say that a lot. You have to compromise.
And, you know, you were just seeing people trying to figure it out, you know, because the marriage is just the beginning, isn't it, really? And, you know, it was nice to see some people married 30, 40 years. And what they thought of each other at the beginning wasn't all, you know, rose petals and, you know, dim lighting necessarily, right?
Oh, are you talking about the older couples that
yes, I'm talking about the
show?
Yes, I'm talking about them, you know, and it just shows that it all comes in different shapes and sizes. So I guess my overall lesson from watching this was, you know, leave your expectations at the door, come in with the best intentions, and let things flow.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, you know, Seema said it herself, you've just said it. You have to compromise, you have to be flexible, but she said this whole thing of if the stars don't align, you know, what can she do? And whatever you believe in, like, it's so true, whether it's fate, whether it's God's, you know, stars, if that all doesn't align, if it's all not how it's planned out to be, then there's nothing any matchmaker, any app, anything can do, you know. You're either meant to be or not for whatever time period.
Yeah, I think timing is definitely everything with any relationship. And, you know, I guess I want to say to anybody, you know, watching, don't feel less of yourself if you're not hitting that ideal, because unfortunately I think the ideal of marriage is painted as a norm, as an expectation. I don't think that's healthy. You know, I think that it's a beautiful thing if it happens, but I think if you paint it as a norm when it's really an ideal, because so many different things have to align at once for you to get married, and let alone find someone first, that can be obviously problematic. But yeah, it's interesting as well with, I guess, you know, this Meg Thee Stallion situation. So we have this Drea person who's Meg's friend, they're also a celebrity, and she said, oh, I would love somebody who loved me so much that, you know, he's going to shoot me in my foot if I say I'm going to leave. And can you imagine if that was like criteria, you know,
so toxic,
in the same way as Indian matchmaking? Oh, criteria, well, he's willing to shoot me in my feet, you know, if I ever say I'm going to leave.
That's so ridiculous. I'm like, how can you say that? Like, little girls, little boys might be watching. That's just ridiculous.
Well, a lot of people use the L word, the L bomb, to excuse a lot of their
toxic
behavior.
Abuse.
Yeah, people do use it. Yeah, and you know, a lot of people find justification in it. I mean, you know, this Drea person was joking, but I don't know if that's even a thing that you can joke about. And
I think it's not something you joke about when your friend, supposed best friend, has been shot in the foot. You don't joke about that a few days after that's happened.
No, I mean, you know, violence has no place in a relationship. Anybody that expresses their love through violence in any kind of capacity is not the person, you know, you need to be with at the end of the day. But I think a lot of people don't see that until even they have a kid and they think, oh, what if that happened to my kid? You know, that's when they kind of care more. So I think it's important to kind of look at yourself with that kind of love as well. Yeah.
It's an interesting point, because kind of going back to Indian matchmaking, the really nice guy, Vyasa, he was worried about kind of talking about his family background, where his father was violent to his partners and actually ended up in prison for threatening to kill one of his ex-partners. And this was when Vyasa was a kid, so even having a kid in the mix doesn't prevent people from being violent to partners. But it's just, I found like you could see in his face, you know, like the emotion talking about it.
Naturally.
Yeah, and you sort of compare that to this girl who's joking about what happened to her friend, and it's sort of like, come on.
Yeah, seriously, people got to level up their expectations, man, especially a 30-something. You know, maybe not every day try and go viral, maybe put a message up there that's positive, but it won't go viral.
Just have a bit of empathy or self-respect, respect for your friend. I don't know, you don't have to comment on everything, you know. But anyway, bit of a tangent. But yeah, I guess my overall view of the show is that it was very entertaining. It made me think of a lot of comparisons to Nigerian kind of pressures of getting married there, and the traditional roles and stereotypes. But it kind of infuriated me in terms of the colorism, you know, all the references to fair skin, I want them to be fair. Like, it was a lot. It was at least a few times every episode it was mentioned, wasn't it?
Well, it's because Seema knows what the families want. You know, Seema is just a provider. You guys customize your pizza online. And Seema just knows, so she, okay, fairness, being skinny is a plus point, being tall, you know, so all these kind of things that allude to basically the European ideals of beauty, ultimately, they're all the desirable traits. So yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, and Keita kind of rebelled against what people were saying about her looks. And I didn't necessarily say she was dark, but she was talking about her looks and, you know, equating that to her values. She did rebel against that. So, you know, the question is, I guess, overall, are you looking forward to the second series? Would you watch it?
Oh yeah, definitely I would watch it, because I think you kind of fall in love with the characters a bit and you want to see how they're getting on, and it'd be interesting to see how Seema is in the next series, if she changes based on all of this online outrage or not. I mean,
she won't.
I don't think she will. I don't know if she should, because that's how she makes her money. It doesn't make it right though, like in terms of the whole fair skin thing. I think wherever you go matchmaking wise, whether it's on an app or with this Seema lady, there will be criteria and people will pick and choose what they want. You know, people do that without a matchmaker, just based on what people look like and what they assume someone to be like. So it exists with or without Seema, I'm afraid.
Seema just reflects obviously the societal definitions of beauty, basically. It's messed up, so you know, I think it's okay to say something is wrong and be dead against it. But you know, ultimately she wants to please her clients more than the viewers. I don't know if she's going to switch that up a little bit. So also I wanted to ask as well, like, who was your favourite couple on the show? When I say couple, I guess, yeah, who was your favourite match?
I don't really have a favourite match, but I have a favourite date.
Okay.
The goat yoga. It was so cute. And I feel like that's kind of one of the bits where a partner actually showed a bit of her sensitive side, and she was sort of having fun with the goats and having fun with her dates. He seemed like a really nice guy. I don't think they stayed together. I'm not sure. I have to read up on that. But yeah, I really liked that date. I liked the chemistry they had, but I mean, anything with animals, that's just me, done.
Yeah, no, you are, for sure.
How about you?
I liked the Chicago date
Oh, on the boat.
Yeah, so who was
With
that?
Nadia and the lawyer.
Yeah, Nadia and the smiley lawyer guy who owns like a practice. Yeah, I like that one because I think they just had the most organic chemistry from what I could see straight off the bat. You know, they just clicked. Yeah, and you know, obviously both of them had bad first dates, but they still came into the next date very enthusiastic, and you know, that's a good metaphor for anything. Don't count yourself out. You know, there were tears involved. I mean, she blamed it on her period, but
oh, you mean with her first date?
Yeah, there were tears involved.
Oh, he was a
there was tears involved. Yeah, I mean,
he just used her, and that was it.
Yeah, and that's something that people do outside of these situations. They kind of give you the illusion of something more in order to just kind of go a bit further than you otherwise would, I think. I mean, she didn't say that happened, but I just think that's what I sense happened. And then after that, he just didn't want to...
Disappeared.
Yeah.
Literally.
But those are the same kind of guys. I mean, he'll see her on that date and he'll still send her a text like, oh, congrats. You know? And then if you're the girl, you're reading that, your heart will skip for a moment and then you'll just delete it.
Just delete it. Swipe.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Or I still think about you. He'll probably send her some of those, you know, here and there just to test the waters. It's all a game, isn't it, for some of these guys and girls?
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope they did well. It was interesting how she was like, oh, nobody from India will accept me because I'm Guyanese. I was thinking, why do you date outside? But I guess it comes down to making
that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it comes down to,
like, is that accepted within the culture to marry outside? I mean, even though she seemingly had Indian heritage but felt separated by being Guyanese, even she seemed to want to date within her. I don't know if she was being forced to by her parents, but she definitely wanted to, you know?
I think if she was being forced, we would have seen it, because I saw a lot of force on that show, you know? We saw a lot of, and they weren't shy about it, you know? Yeah, I think clearly there's a lot of, I guess, beautiful aspects to the culture that they belong to, and they don't want to lose that. You know, if anything, some people want to double down, and that's the glue for their identity almost.
And I guess it's, if you're having kids, you want to bring your kids up in that kind of a similar way to you were brought up, and I do think it is nice to marry someone that you have stuff in common with. And stuff doesn't need to be explained. It makes things easier, maybe. There's sort of an unwritten understanding on certain things, maybe. But I just think people miss out on potentially meeting other great people in the world by sort of having the blinders down.
Yeah, the limiter. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I have to say, there's one thing, you know, I know about any relationship. It's that, you know, the perfect person on paper is not the perfect person by nature.
Hey,
you know what I mean? So really you should scrunch up your flipping your criteria, yeah, because it's going to come down to a bit of luck, a bit of chemistry, a bit of stuff that you can't control, personalities, you know. But I mean, they did allude to that anyway with the biodaters. If the stars don't align, they don't align. Even Aparna said, look, you know, Seema's actually got me good matches, but it's up to us. Yeah, but it's up to us, you know. So it's a balance, people. Yeah, have your standards, but I think the less tick boxes, the better. I mean, I wouldn't survive 1 minute if I was a flipping biodata. That's why I do my hunting in real life.
I also think that sometimes you need to approach this kind of stuff with common sense, because the perfect person doesn't exist. Like, no one is perfect. Everyone is gonna have something that's not perfect, you know? Do you know what I mean? Like, regardless of all the criteria, the biodata, what they look like, there's gonna be something that's not perfect, and you're not perfect too, so why would you ever expect someone else to be perfect? You can't, you can't have that expectation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that you're going to have to react to as well, you know, that may come your way. Could be health, could be financial insecurity.
Yeah, life throws curveballs all the time.
The lifestyle goes and then the person goes just as quick, you know, whether it's woman or man.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so that's Indian Matchmaking. So overall, I agree with you that, you know, despite the misgivings, I'm definitely looking forward to the next series, just from almost an
I'm gonna have to look it up.
anthropological.
Oh, is that right?
I feel like it is. And just like from a fly on the wall perspective, it's always interesting to watch people's personalities and their attitudes, and almost to learn as well about a different culture and how that intermingles in a modern world. Yeah. And that was in America. I wonder if they'd do something like that in the UK. I mean,
well, she was in India and America,
sorry,
wasn't she?
Yeah, so she was in India and
there must be someone in the UK that does that. There must be.
Yeah, I want them to put it on TV. You know? Do it with
watch
your chest.
everyone.
Yeah, just it's a friend of a friend. Because you know it was interesting. I think there's so many different ways you can attack love from, I guess, if it is something to be attacked. You know,
choice of words.
If it isn't, well, I mean, it seems like a goal, right? Love and marriage was a goal for a lot of these parents. So, yeah, I like to see all these shows, Married at First Sight, Indian Matchmaking, you know, Love is Blind. I like to see.
Oh yeah, Love is Blind was
yeah,
good,
so
wasn't
we're gonna kick on with that one on another episode, because you know how we like to do these big Hinge episodes. So we're not going to do too long this time. But yeah, so anything else you want to add or touch on about Indian Matchmaking season 1?
No, just as you said, very interesting watch, but you know, I'm very conscious that some people didn't find it interesting and were quite upset by it. So it's always good to see different points of view, and you know, this, to some people this is their culture being represented in a way they're not happy with, or making them think about, you know, things that were said. So maybe for us it's an interesting watch, but for other people it's like, wow, okay, I need to really think about how I approach marriage or how I approach colorism, or sort of really introspective.
No one wants somebody outside the culture pointing their finger at the culture and saying this is what's wrong. But, you know, I think we all have to stand up internally and externally and say, right, you know, that's not cool because of what the stuff it leads to. And, you know, to me it seemed authentic. They didn't pull any punches. You know, if something doesn't offend you, then it probably wasn't authentic in some ways.
Well, that's one of the girls on the show, Nadia, said that from her perspective it was very authentic. How it was displayed in the episode. When it was filmed, everyone was made to feel they could be completely themselves. So I think that's a positive. Hopefully that was everyone else's experience too, and they didn't feel like it was kind of edited to an extent where that's not really what they said or not really how they felt. You know?
I doubt it. I mean, like you said, it's not a Married at First Sight situation. This is seriously people's families and people's lives looking for love, you know, as far as I can see. All right, then, cool. So that's been Love Uncut. So if you like this episode, definitely give us a thumbs up. Definitely share this episode with your friends.
And subscribe.
And subscribe. And put your comments below the video. Let us know what you thought. Do you agree with Selena? Do you agree with us both? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with us both? Definitely keen to hear it. Especially if you've already binged watched it like we have.
Yeah.
So
I think that was one of the quickest shows that we watched.
Well, each episode was 20 minutes. But yes, there are certain shows where we just have to. We can't help. But, you know, just go through them. So yeah, we'll be back next week, 6 o'clock. All right, people, so stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.